T-Mobile app, on your Alexa-powered smart speaker, and on TuneIn, iHeart, and on Odyssey. Now, from the Signature Bank Studios, this is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson. America First with Sebastian Gorka. Today at 3, right before Sean Thompson at 4 on AM 560. The Answer.
So did you watch it on Monday, the inauguration?
No. I can't watch television.
What do you mean you can't watch television?
I only have streaming services. I don't even have an antenna.
It was on
I mean, I watched
all the
excerpts of
stations?
it. I watched excerpts of it.
Well, it was quite the show. The first person who spoke was a woman named Melanie Cerna. She's from the American Indian Center of Chicago. Yeah. Well, just hear for yourself. And she was being heckled by fellow Native Americans that were in the audience.
Chicago's origin story is rooted in very difficult reality that we all must confront together. It centers on the very land we're gathered upon today, and I ask you to consider for just a moment, how was this land originally acquired?
Okay, this is great.
Long before the metal beams scraped the sky and the freeways scarred the soil, citizens from numerous Native nations made this land their home. Chicago is the traditional homelands of the Council of the Three Fires, the Ojibwe, Odawa, and Potawatomi nations. Many other nations, including the Miami, Ho-Chunk, Menominee, Sauk, and Meskwaki, also made their homes here. We acknowledge that since time immemorial, these people lived, loved, raised families, and created community on this land. They cared for, celebrated, and gave thanks to this land. And in short, they built a loving and lasting reciprocal relationship with the land that we're on today.
But the land was taken away. It was very anti-American.
The original people were stolen from the land as they were forced to leave through lies, torture, violence, and genocide. Beginning immediately, we must intentionally create actionable steps to boldly dismantle settler colonialism here in Chicago. As a community, we must ready ourselves with the strength, wisdom, and courage to lead the next 7 generations.
This was the opening remarks.
Wow.
It was very, anti-American, anti-Chicago, all about violence. And I just wasn't expecting that.
No.
And then they sang the Black National Anthem, which, that's fine. But they had their hands up. It was just, there was no white people there. And I'm just saying, if there was a white mayor who had an inauguration with all white people, are you kidding me? I mean, it should have been a better representation of the city of Chicago.
I mean, no white people.
Like the Polish, the Irish.
That's not part of the coalition, though.
Yeah, but I mean, my God.
That's not part of it.
Someone who is there is joining us now. Return guest, Alderman Ray Lopez, Alderman of the 15th Ward. I saw you there at the inauguration because you were sworn in again for another term. Good morning, Alderman. First of all, how are you?
Good morning, Amy. Good morning, John.
Hey,
good morning to all of your listeners this happy Thursday.
Yeah, so what did you think of the inauguration?
Well, let's get the party started after this Monday's festivities. I try to keep a dignified face, but apparently my facial expression.
Yeah, I noticed. But it wasn't just you.
Story.
I'm sorry for interrupting. It wasn't you. It was everyone. Even the First Lady, Pritzker, MK, she looked a little bewildered at what was going on.
For a political group of socialists and progressives who are all about unity, the more they talk, the more they seem to want to espouse the destruction of everything that makes our society civilized, normal, and makes Chicago the most beautiful city in the world. And it was quite telling for me, not only starting off with the indigenous person's retelling of that amount of hatred, and then as well hearing that person being shouted down by their own people.
I know, that was so weird.
That was in the background wasn't directed at any of us. I think it was directed at the speaker.
Well, did security come and remove them? Because they were pretty boisterous.
They came and removed them because there was about 3 or 4 women in the back weighing the rafters screaming about put a stop to the child abusers, domestic abusers, and rapists. And we're like, where's that coming from?
Wow.
But we think it was geared towards some of that organizational strife that we know is so prevalent in many of these not-for-profit universes. But yes, definitely, it was a very awkward inauguration. It wasn't as bad, I will say, as when Lori Lightfoot basically turned around and gave us all the finger 4 years ago. But having to sit there with some cringeworthy moments, like when the mayor equated the death of Adam Toledo, the gang recruit, to the cold-blooded murder of Officer Ariana Preston, that had a chilling effect on the common sense folks in the room. But you know full well that this room for the inauguration was loaded with far-left progressives, CTU members up the wazoo.
Randy Weingarten was there, for gosh sakes.
Next
to Stacey Davis Gates.
All of those individuals were on stage with us as we were trying to get inaugurated, wondering why we're being surrounded by all of these individuals. And as one of the two people who actually got booed during the inauguration, it's interesting hearing people's comments when they're sitting right behind you and realizing what people are clapping for and what they're not clapping for, and understanding that what was most striking was that public safety, the number one issue in Chicago, only barely got 2 mentions in a 40-plus minute speech.
Wow.
So what is the plan for safety? I know he said he was working on it. What do you envision that to be, and when is he going to release his public safety plan?
Well, when he finally started going through we need a city that deals with X, Y, and Z, when it came to public safety, he said we need a safe city, and that involves focusing on mental health, housing, and all of the usual talking points. Nothing about holding criminals accountable, nothing about supporting our police, nothing about making sure that they are prosecuted when they are arrested. All of those key aspects of law enforcement were missing. And we keep pivoting back to the so-called root causes, which are just the fancy agendas of trying to get, rent control and universal basic income and all these other far-left ideas as the panacea for violence in Chicago, which we know is not going to work. I'm hopeful that Fred Waller and Rich Gaitis and some other level-headed individuals are going to be able to stand up and push him back. But I also know that he's got some far-left people in his ear pushing this agenda, and we saw this just yesterday when his allies and people on his transition team released a $12 billion taxing plan that includes things like a 300% increase in jet fuel, charging landlords if they have vacant apartments for not renting them out to anybody who walks in, a city income tax of 3.5%, a whole slew of things that are just, outrageous and could be very destructive to our neighborhoods and to our economy, all for the sake of pushing forward with no explanation as to what actually any of this money would be going for.
Wow.
And while defunding police 10% every year.
Oh, I'm sorry. Can you repeat that?
Defunding the police department 10% every year.
I mean, it's just not sustainable. And then the CEO of the CME group, I think he's going to get up and leave.
Yeah.
Don't you?
I absolutely think he will. And it's not just, everyone seems to think that putting $1 or $2 on a trade is no big deal when you're talking about these big, the mercantile exchange and whatever. But think about how many friends you have that do their day trading or fund trading on their phones and buy like their little stocks here in AMC or whatever they're buying, Subway, whatever people do. Because I got staff members who do this, and I'm just bewildered by it. But when you start adding $1 to every one of those trades, you're going to start hitting real-world people very quickly.
Wow.
The working poor who are trying to, just make a couple extra dollars in the stock market or just dabbling in it, it'll go from being fun to being painful very quickly.
Yeah.
And this is an industry that can up and leave and do this anywhere in the world. They don't have to stay here in a brick-and-mortar building. And CME is already polling their employees, from what I've been told the other day. What city would you like to work in if we're not in Chicago?
Wow. Alderman Lopez, what do you think of the challenges in this incoming administration in their first 100 days? What will that look like? And has he promised to I know Lori Lightfoot signed an executive order on limiting automatic privilege. Has he said anything about how he's going to work with you guys as the alderman?
Well, at our inauguration, he said he wanted to be collaborative. He wanted to work together.
Okay.
And I will say that he and I have spoken more in the past 3 weeks than Lori Lightfoot and I did in the past 4 years.
Wow.
So I have hope that maybe I have an avenue to plead my case when his policies come up, because he does return phone calls, so I will gladly give him that. But I also know that in the first 100 days, he said that he wants to pass the treatment, not trauma ordinance, which allows for mental health professionals to respond to 911 calls for people in mental crisis. That's going to be difficult because it's not a co-responder model. That's only a mental health model. I know he's also said that he wants to pass the Bring Chicago Home ordinance, which addresses homelessness but also includes a real estate transfer tax increase, as well as some other issues that are very heavy-handed on property owners and landlords, and forcing them to rent individuals, forcing people to be told what to do with their property, which is a clear violation of the U.S. Constitution, and to hold them liable if they choose not to rent to anyone. If they have a two-flat and don't want to rent it out, they will now be required to pay taxes and fees for failing to rent. So that's a very ambitious, a very leftist agenda, but I don't know how that's going to fly to many members of this city council, especially when what you're espousing has languished in city council, because no one, whether they're socialists or progressives, wants to have a conversation and talk about finding a middle ground. Yeah. It's our way or the highway, and the highway is going to have a dead end very, very quickly.
So does he have a check on the power? Are there enough aldermanic members who can put a check on this very, very, very progressive agenda?
It's going to be close, and it's going to require a very vocal electorate and city to pay attention. You know, with so many new members come new ideas, but also with so many new members comes the lack of institutional knowledge to know what works and what doesn't. Yep. For someone who's never been a part of government, having a head tax sounds great. Why shouldn't big employers pay money for having employees, if it helps us raise
$33 a head if you have a 50-plus or more employees. So that would incentivize you not to cut it off at 49, then you have to pay the head tax.
Correct. Or not come here at all. Or if you're, for example, a McDonald's franchisee and you have 100 people at your McDonald's, which is oftentimes the starting job for the youth that we're so concerned about, you're going to be disincentivized to hire more people and to expand and give more opportunities, because you have to pay more money monthly just for the honor of hiring people.
Wow. All right, let's move on to the migrant crisis, because the black community wants your ward. It's you to take all the Latino migrants. And they filed a lawsuit to stop people from coming to South Shore High School. And what is your response to that?
Well, first off, let's lay blame where blame belongs. Okay. When it comes to this migrant crisis, and even the situation as it relates to the unchecked immigration policies that we've seen over the last 20-plus years, you have to blame Congress for creating this disaster, and for both parties for benefiting and then pointing the finger at the other one for not being a part of the solution.
Facts.
They have completely failed this country, and all of them should be booted out of office for sheer abdication of their responsibilities in protecting this country and the laws that they supposedly care about. Second, they're here. I'm not going to get into the why they're here, how they're here. They're here when we have to deal with them. Lori Lightfoot and Greg Abbott and all them were pointing fingers, and Lori being Lori, doing her usual gaslighting. That's her.
Well, Governor Pritzker too wanted Abbott and DeSantis charged.
Well, but again, that goes back to the whole left, right, Democrat, Republican. Both of them are playing to their bases.
Right. They wanted them arrested for human trafficking.
And in the end, you've got babies sleeping on linoleum floors in the police department.
Yeah.
What I find outrageous is that Lori Lightfoot can say with a straight face that she spent $20 million a month for the past 9 months addressing the migrant situation, and this is the best that we've come up with. Where did all that money go? And I've asked and asked and asked for 3 weeks now for a line-by-line item on all the spending, because I want to see whose friends got what.
Right.
Because clearly we've dumpster fired $160 million at this point, when this is the best that we've come up with. In the meantime, we have to come up with a better solution. We have to come up with a unifying solution, and I don't know how easy that's going to be, considering the poor start that we've gotten off on when dealing with this crisis. We've had refugees and asylum seekers come here before. We've had environmental refugees come from Puerto Rico when Hurricane Maria hit. We've had Afghanis come here when Joe Biden left Afghanistan and all of our support team came here. The city has rallied around people who have done great things or are in need of help. That's what we do. But that moment was never presented to Chicago, which is why we see so much bitterness and animosity, particularly in the black community, where no one has engaged them, and they come to find out that, oh, look, that school that we took away from you, we're now going to give it to somebody else, and we're going to put millions of dollars into fixing it for them, but not for you.
Yeah, they didn't repurpose it for the black community, and some organizers said they've been trying for years to get into that building.
Yep. And I think that the solution there is, if Mayor Johnson wants to actually put this behind us, then he needs to tell the black community, tell his former constituents on the west side and his new constituents throughout the entire city of Chicago that, look, we need to address this. We're going to invest in these schools. We're going to create these centers that are going to have health, mental health, you name it, to deal with the migrants in this moment. But we're going to keep these centers open and turn them over to you as soon as we get through this situation. He will engender so much goodwill within the black community and other disinvested communities and give us an opportunity to address the situation. But I know that's not going to be the case because oftentimes there's not going to be the friendly delegate agencies or not-for-profits being able to capitalize on that investment and by doing that. Because turning it over to the community is not what this is about. This is about making sure all the not-for-profits, all of the poverty pimps that are out there with their hands out right now continue to get fed. And that's not a racket that he wants to tackle at this point.
All right. Always sound solutions. That's why we always have you on time after time. Alderman Ray Lopez, Alderman of the 15th Ward. Thank you so much, and we really appreciate you.
It would have been great, Mayor
I know.
Lopez, but okay.
Maybe next time. That's always...
Well, at least I will still be there to keep everyone's feet to the fire.
That's why we love you. All right. Thanks, Alderman. And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
Hear about the big stories of the day, then talk about them right here on Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
It's summertime, and you want to keep the shop, warehouse, and other doors open for ventilation. Air circulation improves the well-being of your employees and customers, but open doors can let in the uninvited, like strangers.